Once in a powder of snow, red garland could still glow for the gander. Just before its petals had flown, all rosy in the wind, was nothing grander. I'm walking in my own footsteps again in a cold December, and I remember how my baby played in that damn red old leander. Once in the powder of snow, red garlands still grow. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Viral Poetry Series, the January edition, January 2021. We were supposed to have flying cars and all kinds of cool things by this time, and we don't. It's very disappointing. Instead, we have automated cars that keep running over people because it can't see. But I'll still ride in one because it sounds cool. Anyway, that's not what this reading is about. Welcome to the show. My name is Adam Greenfield. If you don't know, this is our monthly reading. We have two poets. Each will read about 10 minutes. And then each one of us will have a 10-minute conversation after that. Sorry, my cat made a weird noise in the litter box, and I wanted to see what that was. It's going to be a good show. Tonight we have two poets that I am extremely excited about, Kazim and Karla Cordero. These I actually discovered Kazim just very recently. As a matter of fact, I found him. He did a sort of a reading and discussion through the Book Catapult here in San Diego. And then I got his book, and I was like, all right, I got to have this guy on the show. And I've known Karla for a couple years now, actually. And she's, if you don't know Karla Cordero, you really need to familiarize yourself with her because her writing is great. Her spirit is fantastic. Her energy is much higher than mine could ever be. And that's a good thing. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear both of these writers. So let's see. Anything else we got? Oh, music that you just heard. If you made it in time, that was a friend of mine out in Chicago. His name is Andrew Havey, and I've been playing him a couple shows already. So he's an amazing musician. He's a songwriter, and he wrote that little poem called Red Oleander, and he put it to music, and he's a good dude. He's a really good dude, and he's a great musician, and I'm excited about that. So if you write music, if you know anybody that has music and they would be interested in having me play it, either to open or close the show, let me know. I'm very, very interested in that because I really want to spread the word about the creative things people are doing, even musically here. So, yeah, I want to make sure that is being done. Let's see. You know what? Let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's actually just get started. I'll talk about some things at the end of the show, like how much I need a haircut. Holy shit. But yeah, we'll chat more at the end. So what I want to do now, our first poet, as I mentioned, Kazim, he wrote a book, as you'll about to see, but I have a copy here because I like it. It's called The Voice of Sheila Chandra. This book is, it's one of those ones where you read it once and you're so enamored with it that you know that you missed things, so you're going to have to go back and read it multiple times. And I'm just a really big fan. So I don't know if he'll read from this one or if he's going to read from other ones. We'll find out. But either way, we'll definitely talk a little bit about this book when we chat after his reading. So let's go ahead and bring in Kazim Ali. 1 second here. All right. Updating things. Hello, Kazim. Can you hear me?
Hi there. Can you hear me? No?
Oh, wait, hold
And
on. See, we had this trouble before, and this is a technical thing. I don't know if this is on my end because can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
You
Yeah.
can hear me. All right, awesome. Okay, cool.
And
My
you can
so
hear
I
me.
think I can hear you. I can hear
Okay.
you. What's going on is my computer sucks because this happens all the time. Every time I switch scenes, like this little freezing things happens. Sometimes I can't hear people. Sometimes I can. So that's definitely on me. We can hear you now. I can hear you now. We're all good.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Listen, thank you for joining me tonight, and I'm really excited. Can you just to start, just talk about what you got going on and a little bit about yourself so people kind of get to know you.
Well, hi everybody. I'm living here in San Diego. Good to meet you. And I'm really happy to be here with my fellow San Diego poets. I moved here after 12 years in the Midwest. um, and in
I spent 8 years in Iowa, so I'm familiar with
I
the
moved here
Midwest.
after 12, not quite 12 years, more like more like 10 and a half, but at any rate, in Ohio, and I lived in a swing state, not purple, not really. And glad to be in California. I moved here in January of 2019, so I've just been here for a little while, but I'm loving here. Life on the Bluff. I live in Normal Heights, not quite on a canyon, but like half a block away from one, anyways. But I'm loving my
Close enough.
yeah, yeah. So happy to be here with you all and writing poems and teaching at UCSD and trying to uh, subvert the dominant paradigm. And
Yes.
yeah, welcome to it's another Wednesday in America.
Welcome to it.
Yeah,
This is the new America.
Capitol has been stormed,
Uh,
and it wasn't us. So I mean,
did you think it would be? Did you really think it would be? You know,
I
like that.
mean, it's happened in history, but no, I not really. No.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, not in our history. Not at least not in our lifetime history.
Well, I mean, Mitt
But
Romney
yeah.
is the like flame-being leftist who's being accosted in airports and called a traitor. So
No,
it's
right.
dark
Isn't
days.
that weird how he's yeah, how did that happen? Like
I don't know. I don't know.
how am I looking at George W. Bush Jr. and going, okay,
As a somewhat
like
reasonable, yeah.
what has happened? What has happened? Um anyway,
The
so
bar has been lowered. Yeah.
yeah, I think the bar has been dropped. I think there is no bar anymore. And I think a lot of people have actually had too much at the bar. So,
Yeah.
um, so let's go ahead and jump in. I'm gonna. What I'll do is I'll step away. Go ahead and let you read for about 10 minutes or so, and then I'll
Okay.
come back in and we'll chat. So what's gonna happen is my face is gonna disappear, because, and then once that happens, the virtual floor is yours.
All right.
All right?
Well, I thought I would read a new poem, and then it's actually not a new poem. It's actually it's a poem that's 4 years old, but it's not in the new book, which is this book right here. So I'll read that new poem first, new-ish poem, and then I'm going to read from the book, and then I thought I would close with another poem that's not in the book. So this poem is called Pulse. To the sharp report in the dark, the season comes home. Long tongue sound between hand an arm between mouth and flesh. Hold this moment, river, still. What if it was my life? To return after years to the same province of danger, an old town, you know, like the handle, the bump stock, the trigger. I want to return to the boat that bore me from the far shore decades ago. What I lived in those languages I forgot. The places I left I want to return to. Were we seen? Were we spoken? Were all the wolves baying? Met at the edge of the bright darkness of rain? Time cannot fulfill its promise to splinter, return, or slow. Vow this wheel, this we will, this wheel we even wean. We in the world would wool the low vow fold, worn low at the hip, to be a solid soldier who soiled his soul for the chance to be the first to aim, first to fire, to fly. In the crosshairs I am no air to oar to hold. I am on both sides of the gun, told as sound or cost, one that never ends and the other never returns. Any embrace is the first error in meaning's slope, wrought by thought that one could reach another, touch his shape, known in two genders, like Orlando, whose tongue newly woke to pronounce any word for God or man means to enter violence's fold. No oath sworn to save, no salvation, no solve, no valor, no ovation, no nation. So that's Pulse. That was written in June of 2016. So 4.5 years ago now. This book is called The Voice of Sheila Chandra, and it's comprised of 3 long poems. And the middle title poem, the one that's called The Voice of Sheila Chandra, is 40 sonnets. And it's either one long poem or else it is 40 a sequence of 40 sonnets in it. And so the individual sonnets, I'm just going to read. I'm going to read several of them. Today is C.D. Wright, a great American poet who passed away a couple of years ago. It's her birthday today. So she was a friend and a mentor. And there are several poems in here that mention her. And so I thought I would read those poems. I thought it was 3 poems that mention her, but it might only be 2 poems. So I'll read those two sonnets that mention C.D. Wright, and the C in C.D. Wright's name stood for Carolyn. That's what she's called here. The ocean is a dress a woman might wear, like I would wear, with dark lips and smoky eyes, like the vow I abandoned in the hills last time I signed up for math and anger. I return emerging, and from the ocean of electronic sound, letters come recounting every past day. I know God comes only in madness and mess. Then a photo of Carolyn and I on the shore of the cold, cold lake, exchanging secrets of translation and lust. Sitting down on the bench, I take refuge in the Lord of time, Lord of the storm, Lord, oh Lord, this lake, Carolyn gone, water too cold to swim in. I opened all the windows to let the storm in. Everything in the room scatters, or is it shatters? Yesterday I climbed up the cup canai. I felt no feeling of worship of the body's ability, no bliss, no work, nothing at the end of it. Christianity is a trick of power. The letter flies from my hand before I am ready. It is sent before I know it, already failed in the wake of Carolyn's death. Her husband packed up her mother's crystal to sell. He said under his breath, all these things no one wants. And maybe I will read two more of these sonnets, and then I'll close my reading with the other new poem. Okay. Sheila Chandra is a singer who lost her voice. She can't sing anymore. In a world governed by storm and noise, why? Then should a singer not fall silent, though by great suffering her mouth, that orchestra hall aflame, the drone, her most minuscule movement still, do the echoes resound. Even now can I discern them. Anish Kapoor explores the place, sight disappears, a rich dark that opens. He makes shapes of them, invites you to understand or learn where the effort to understand fails. Agnes Martin, her shapes of white absence, both what, when the throat fails, sounds out, does Sheila still listen to music? What does it sound like? Calligraphy is a meeting point between abstract and particular. By certain combinations of visual marks to make symbols, Chandra lost her voice around the same time I found mine at midnight. We went to swim in the sea so we could be in the dark and not know the bottom. But the moon lit up the surface, so silver, so slammed, and then the boy, with the fear of failure, falling, architecture, voice, God, depths, death, he swam. So that is this book, The Voice of Sheila Chandra. I hope you will check it out. And I want to close my reading with a short new poem. And it's called The Prayer for Kazim. Kazim is Chasm, but it's also a mispronunciation of my name, Kazim. What you ask for, to hold me whole, that new moon wants you, unseen, unctuous, willing to go to any length to rise. You lie on your back, in cold spring lost or tossed, how they are the same, both questions to a world unanswerable. You were never known, none can say your name, so impossible you unpronounce, never in knowable days able to be in a place or be a person who speaks, who thinks, who does the laundry, and always instead this dealer of done deals, of what's done under, done plain, grass than, waiting then, to lie at the beach, the sun, the sky, the salt, let it all have you, have at you, jailed at the shore, sure that the near star will unravel solar threads to spin in gold squares the new narrative of normal, the one where you stop answering, the one where you stop asking how deep this hole, this chasm between who you were, are, and thought you would be. You do not cross, are not afraid. The chasm is a thought. Who is thinking, I will live? Those are the poems.
All right. Wow. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration of that last one, where that came from?
I mean, that is a poem to myself, I guess, and they're the chasm as a space between when we imagine ourselves in the future, who we think we're going to be, and then maybe someday you get there. You know, if you imagine at any point in your life where you imagine, where am I going to be in 5 years? And you kind of come up with a plan, and then maybe 5 years from then you actually think, hey, this is where I thought I was going to be in my life. But more profoundly than that, I think, who did you think you were going to be? You know, did you grow up? Did you get smarter? Did you just keep making the same mistakes over and over again? And I think we're beautifully flawed, wonderful, fabulous, messy, engaging little things crawling around on the surface of the planet trying to get by, and I think that's really magical. I don't know. To live is just,
And
it's a
sometimes we
disaster. It's a beautiful disaster.
beautiful disaster is a great way to put it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds about right. Because it's interesting, even just with the events of today. Like, I think today was a beautiful disaster. You look at what happened in Georgia, and then you look what happened in DC, and you're like, beautiful disaster. Like,
I mean, everyone's trying to get
yeah,
by, and we're all so limited by our own perceptions. And we're so
yeah.
restrained by what we can see and what we can understand, that I think the most important quality that a human can have is to know that they don't know everything, and to accept that the world is wide and big and frightening. And I think almost always, like, if there is evil, I think evil is when you're certain about yourself, and evil is when you believe that you are right and other people are wrong. I think anything other than that, it's like we're all just mucking along trying to figure it out, and we've unfortunately have this, like, the most powerful person in our country right now is a person who's convinced of his own rightness, and that's just a recipe for all kinds of disaster. That's what
Yeah,
I
the
believe.
disaster we're
That's
we're
what I
seeing.
think.
Yeah, no,
I think
you know,
the biggest crime is, I'm right, other people are wrong, I know how to do things, nobody else does. Like, I just think that's the worst quality a human can have.
yeah, you're not to fall into that trap
I know.
sometimes. Um,
It's the state of unknowing is a state of grace.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
quest, like the
and
desire
other
to
people
live.
make it really difficult.
Well, the desire to live as a human, to learn about things. Like, why else are we here? I mean, what is the reason for life? If you're a spiritual person. If you aren't, then it's okay. That's fine too. I happen to be. So I wonder, like, what are we doing here? What was this world made for? What is the point of all of this? If it's not an accident, if it is, fine, well and good, have at it, have a good time, I almost think that would be more fun. But if that's not the case and we're here for something, I think what it seems to make sense that we're here for is to learn something about ourselves and about other people. Otherwise, what's
You
the
would
point?
hope. Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. I remember when I read the Time Machine, and it made me oddly think about human evolution. Like, what are we going to where are we going to be, and what are we going to think like in, let's say, 1,000 years or 2,000 years?
Yeah.
And it's if I'm looking at it in a small scope of just a group of what's happening within the last 100 years, let's say, I'll probably be disappointed. But if I expand that out a bit, and I look at last 2,000 years, there's some growth, I guess. Like,
We have made progress. I mean, we have crawled forward, and there are people, but there are people who have not. I mean, it's like society has evolved as a society, but there are still people who it's like,
Mm,
is it 1953 out there or it's 1853? You know,
right.
the way people are acting and behaving, and it's like, we're not going backwards.
Yeah.
So,
To s- to some, it's still 1776, but
I mean, or yeah, but we're in a new
yeah.
world. Climate change is happening. It's going to change the way that we
Mm,
relate to each other. This virus has wrought a social change that may or may not return to whatever normal is, quote unquote. We don't
yeah.
know. So it's just unfortunately for us, for you and me and Karla and everybody else, like we have to live through these unknowing days. But I think the best that we can do is to rise to the challenge and not turn our back on it and try to figure out what's next and how are we going to live through,
Yeah,
you know?
I think now is not the time to turn our back on it. Maybe,
No,
and I don't want to say go turn it back afterwards or before, like, but right now I think is not a time to make rash decisions.
no.
Like,
I mean, I don't have children, but I have many young people in my life, and I want them to live to be 100 or however long they
right,
have to
right,
live, and I want them to have all of the great experiences that I have and have access to the beauty of the natural world that I've had. And I would like to see like some economic and social justice come to those people who have been, upon whose backs and upon whose property the labor and the wealth of this nation that has created this nation. So there's a lot of work to do. I don't think that poetry is detached from the public life at all, and I think that the intellectual engagement that poetry provides to us and the possibility to know oneself that poetry provides to us is indeed intimately connected to the well-being of the polity, the social and
yeah.
economic, physical, mental, spiritual, intellectual well-being of the polity.
I'm glad you bring that up actually, because that actually is, and I don't like the word actually. I don't know why I keep actually. That was the second question that I had, but while we're talking about it, we might as well we'll talk about it now, because I want to zoom out in scope and look at the poetry genre as a whole, and just how the masses interact with poetry, and curious if you think there is maybe a need to make poetry more palatable for the masses, or if
No, no,
or poetry is meant to just for people to discover it on their own terms.
it's all different kinds of poetry. I mean, there's some that's very, understandable or palatable, as you say. There's long poems, there's short poems. I don't think a poem needs to be anything other than what it is. And I think that the individual poet finds their way. Sometimes you have a different
Yeah,
vocabulary. If you're a musician, you may play jazz, you may play classical music. If you're a violinist, you may play in a string quartet, you may play in an orchestra, you may play in an orchestra for a ballet company or an opera, or you may get on a stage and play, a guitar for a crowd at a bar. Like there's just a million different things that a musician does, and all different kinds of music. They all have different audiences. If you are a violinist for a ballet, for example, as I knew somebody who was, that's why I'm using that as an example. There's a particular audience for the music that you're playing. In fact, they may not even know your name. It's your music is part of the ballet, as opposed to say Sheila Chandra, who I wrote this book about, who was a singer who would get up in front of on a stage and at a music festival and sing, and she's sort of a celebrity in that people knew her name. So I think a poet is the same way. You have poets like Jean Valentine, who passed away recently, who, she was the quote unquote poet's poet. Any poet you talk to, not any poet, but many poets you talk to, she'll be on their list. They loved her work. It's strange and maybe inaccessible in certain ways. And she never had a really big audience. She'd do these readings and maybe like 30 people would be there, or 10 people would be there, or 4 people would be there. She was never bringing in like a crowd of 1,000 people to listen to her. And yet her work was so important to so many people. So I think there's lots of different kinds of poetry and there's lots of different kinds of poets. And I think there's a readership for all of it.
Yeah, no, I that, and I would agree with that. I'm curious. There's some. I've encountered people who, it might be the same people who are just like, I don't like math, but they're just like, I don't get poetry, and I don't know if it's because maybe they're just not poetry people,
I mean, I
or
don't get
if
The
they haven't.
Sopranos. I don't know why people like that show. I know it's supposed to be a really great show. People talk
It's
about it as
fair,
like
yeah.
a wonderful show. I watched an episode and I thought like this is just a horrible. I don't understand it. So,
People like what they like, I guess, right?
there's lots of different arts that are out there, and I think that there is a value in poetry for people, and um, but it's not for everybody. Some people like watching dance. Some people like listening to music, and I will say this. I do think that artistic creation is an important part of just living life as a healthy human. And it's one of the things we recognize in childhood, of course, because when our children are young, we give them tools. You can draw and you have crayons and you have Legos to build things. And then we think at some point like it's not important anymore. But if I met a human who had like a Lego set that they were building with, I would think that's a very, like an adult human, would think that's a very healthy person, mentally healthy person who's like creating as part of their life practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the creativity is yeah, it's
or,
ageless, and
or
it's
singing or
it's been
making music or gardening or just
yeah,
something where you're making something. I know someone who makes
yeah.
furniture. My brother-in-law finishes furniture. He buys junky things at garage sales and then he'll paint it and make it very beautiful. That's what he does.
Oh,
It's not
fun.
professionally, it's just his what he does in his life. And so his home is full. Everything in his house is something he's done, created, painted, something like that, repurposed. And it's very beautiful. You're like walking into an art gallery of his work.
I've started whittling and carving,
Yeah.
and I had no idea how much I enjoyed it, and now I've got like owls and cats and pumpkins and all kinds of things just scattered about my apartment, and it's fun. I don't know if I'm going to do anything with it, but
That's not
just
important.
keeping that. No, it isn't. It's just that the need to keep making stuff. Like, I don't know. It feels good, I guess.
Yeah,
Weird
poetry,
dopamine, but
poetry. At any rate, the poetry that I've published is like a lot of it has been, you know, I write it to write it, and then it gets published, and that's like a bonus. But the
yeah.
important part is the creation.
Well, I want to ask about the creation part then.
Yeah,
This is great. All these things are weaving right into the questions that I have.
yeah.
Um, I've noticed over time that I end up in a lot of conversations on here about poetry evoking various emotions. But one thing that I don't think has come up yet is using like the visual structure of poetry to create emotion or evoke or pull out or draw out some kind of meaning or emotion. And there's a book that's one of my favorite books, but it's called House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, and it's this
Mhm.
very oddly structured book. And there's footnotes, and there's sometimes 3 words on a single page. And it's so the reason I bring it up is because your book is pretty reminiscent of that. You've got
Oh, you mean the end part where the words kind of scatter across?
yeah, you've got this stuff here, with just the columns, and
Yeah.
it creates this feel to it. And I'm wondering, is that intentional, or is that just how you write?
No, it was absolutely intentional. Those lines actually were written. The lines that you just showed with the column with the letters are broken up from each other in a little bit of a grid. They were written as normal lines in the beginning, but then as I was creating the poem, I wanted to have that texture of the oracular voice come in because that poem in particular, the one you're talking about, is the third poem in the book called Phosphorus. And in it, the
Right.
poet is kind of obsessed with the difference between the daily voice and the oracular voice. So there are sections of that poem that are really ordinary, where I'm just describing walking around the city and going and meeting my friend and doing very normal things, right? And then you have those little sections come in that are scattered like that. And so I wanted to demonstrate in some way visually, as you say, to kind of access that, those moments where that queer, strange, um, that disorienting feeling coming into your daily life,
It
Yeah,
it's very effective.
thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I was looking at a book of poetry um, that was published by Four Way Books that had like this scattered, the cover design of the book had that scattered words. And I thought, oh, let me try that. And so that was an experiment and it kind of worked. I think it worked.
I think it worked beautifully. I mean, you start reading it, and just the first part, it's just these one single lines, and there's two, and then there's three. It's
Yeah.
broken, and you're just reading along. You get through that,
And
and
you
you
don't
get to the
always know
end, and
what
it's
the
a
word
short one.
is. Yeah, yeah. As you're reading it, you
Yeah,
don't know what the word is because you're reading it letter by letter. And so sometimes you have to backtrack and yeah.
yeah. It's like one of those things that you see the memes now. It's like the first three words are your like favorite colors, and you're like,
Exactly
oh,
that, yeah. But there's something about the reading
yeah.
practice that's sort of like you're hunting for the right meaning. You're like, is that the word? And then you go backwards and then you come back and you kind of like, so I don't actually read from that poem a lot because I don't want to read it and be familiar with it. I want to forget what the section says so that when I read it, I will have to backtrack myself or stumble over it and then return, kind of to figure it out.
You know, I remember when you did the book catapult reading and you read it. I remember there were times where you would go back,
I had to go
and
back
and
because I
I
got it wrong. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh well, he's probably hasn't read this one in a while, or
Well, yes,
but
that's true, but it's on purpose.
okay,
I on purpose hadn't read it for a while, so I wouldn't remember what the word was, what the sentence was.
and that probably helps create almost a more natural reaction for you as you're reading it.
Hmm.
Um, it's like each time you've got this new reaction almost. So,
Yeah, that's
um,
the goal.
well, Kazim, I appreciate you making the time tonight. I'm really glad we got to hang out and talk. Before we go, there's two things we need to do. Number
Yeah,
one, I want to know your book recommendation for people,
I will
and
give you one.
after that, awesome. And after that, just tell people where they can find you, where they can find your book, and all the things that you're doing.
So my book recommendation for today is not a poetry book. It's a book. It's a book of nonfiction. It's about public architecture. It's called Callous Objects: Designs Against the Homeless, and it's a book that talks about things like park benches and bus stops and um, trash cans, anything that you find in public space and its design, and the ways that designs of these different um, things that we don't even think twice about in public space um, have about them a callousness, actually. So that's a book that I recommend to you. It's from the University of Minnesota Press, and I got my copy at Book Catapult, so you can go down and get it from Book Catapult.
Awesome. That looks like an interesting, and that's probably a very applicable book here in San Diego. So,
Well, there are plenty of people who, um, do not live in houses in the city, and so there are ways that we need to figure out how to make, we can make their lives easier or we can make their lives more difficult. And it's
correct.
us, we should decide how to, you know, interact with our fellow humans. We
It'd be
should be
nice,
doing things
but
to help make their lives easier, yeah, and more fulfilling.
yes, not putting rocks under bridges or
Not put, yeah,
making.
you're getting it, or ridges in the middle
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
part of the benches, yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, totally. All right. So where can people find you then, and what classes are you teaching and all that fun stuff?
So I'm teaching at UCSD. You're welcome to join my classes. You have to pay though, but That's where you can find me. I'm teaching
Sure.
a class on Indigenous studies this winter quarter, and I'll be teaching poetry workshop in the spring. So if you want to come by, you can join us up. And I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Kazim Ali Poet, so you can find me there. Oh,
All
and
right.
I have a new
Kazim,
book coming
again,
in 1 month, which is a memoir, a book of nonfiction. This is the advanced copy of it. It's called
okay.
Northern Light, Power, Land, and the Memory of Water. And it is about growing up in northern Manitoba, where my father worked on a hydroelectric dam that, well, it impacted the local ecosystem. And so after 40 years,
Uh,
I went back, and this is the story of what I found.
that comes out next month.
Next month from Milkweed Editions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's on my reading list now. Thank you very much.
Check
And
it out. Yeah.
as Carlos as Carla said, congratulations on the new book. That's
Thank
pretty
you.
awesome. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, again, thanks, and I hope we keep in touch and talk again soon.
We shall.
All right. Okay. So, first poet out of the way. That was I'm such a big fan, and um, I'm looking forward to the new book. I love the conversation. That was good stuff. So, all right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our second poet. Again, this is Karla Cordero. I've known her for a little while. She's spoken word artist. She's a teacher. She's all those things. So let's go ahead and in Karla Cordero. All right. Let's see here. Getting my clicks in. Is that working? There we go.
Hey.
Karla, how are you?
Doing well, Adam. How you doing?
Okay. Give it 1 second here because I think I need my audio to catch up. Actually, it looks like you might be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Hello. Nope, can't hear you. But that's again, this is what happened last time. So, what we'll do, everyone, this is Karla. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna step aside and wait. I bet I can hear you now. Can you say something, Karla?
Say something, Karla.
Yes, I was hoping you would say that. Thank
Can
you very much. I can
you
hear
hear
you.
me
All
okay
right,
now?
good. Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Just a little delay,
No
a little
worries.
fun delay. Um, but I love that you said, "Can you hear me now, Karla?" That was really great. I like that. Good comedy gold there.
I try.
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm stable. Um, and I'm home with my garden and my books and my partner and staying safe and healthy. And so, none to say the least. I'm stable, happy. Yeah, and here.
Good. That's good. That's good. How's Mario doing?
He's doing great. He's actually hanging out in his office working on, I think, like a graphic novel and putting that together right now.
That's pretty rad. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Next time you talk to him, please give him a hug for me. It's been a while since I've seen him, and I miss seeing
absolutely.
people. So,
I will.
um, okay, so let's go ahead. We're gonna jump in. We'll go ahead and have you read for about 10 minutes, and
Hmm.
then when you're done, we'll chat for a bit.
Great. Sounds like a
All right.
plan.
So I'm gonna hide my camera and my face, and then we'll get you in. Okay. All right. All you.
Awesome. So hi and hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining in. And as Adam and Kazim was talking about, of all days, of all chaotic days, more than ever, I'm super happy we can get together and speak and stay connected through language. Again, just a shout out to Kazim for such a beautiful reading and an honor to be here with y'all to read poems. So here we go. First poem, I want y'all to know that I was doing some research in quarantine life. It kind of forced me to look at the little things and how can the little things become doors into larger worlds, and trying to figure out how to make small spaces bigger. And in that research, I found out that, quote, Snails have a homing instinct, and they will crawl slowly back to their motherland if they are moved. And this is stated by the BBC wildlife film on the Telegraph. And this is a poem. Two snails, a tragic love story. Out in the garden, out of rage, I broke two lovers apart, two slime, hard-shelled devils devouring their way down an entire head of lettuce. The greens raised by seed made only to dream big dreams of crisp bowls of salad, BLTs, to offer the extra leaves to the neighbors so I can call myself a goddess of harvest. But my God, it is hard to stay holy here, holding each creature in my hand, bravest of travelers. I cannot imagine my lover and I split apart, only to think what will become of our bodies at the sound of silence, all because of hunger, all because of faith found in the foundation of our birthplace, because history's sharp knife spiraled between the growth of root. I placed the small couple in a hedge, hundreds of feet away, knowing they will return. I am no God, and yet tomorrow I will beg myself to be a merciful one. And that's my snail poem. I'm going to take us now to another poem. We're now going to goldfish. So here's my goldfish poem. I know we're coming into February, which is like the quote unquote month of love. And so I got a love goldfish poem. Here we go. This is titled Goldfish, a love metaphor. It's Valentine's Day, a day I could bury in the dirt, but keep alive for good company, so I could shovel sugar in my mouth, savor a hot-cooked meal made by my lover, and tomorrow return back to stiff noodles in a foam cup. Instead, my man brings home a goddamn goldfish. And because a poet once said symbols matter, I witness a small slime of water life. Its gills glisten, flex like bricks of gold, paddling back and forth like love, love with its ant legs under glass and sun on the hottest of days. How it too can bounce back and treasure the gleam of light in the sky without coming to a burn. Later, I feed the fish its food that smells of stale Swiss in the back car seat of summer. And because symbols matter, I know when I wake, the gilled animal with its neon movement will shimmer, trembling again and again with the glitter of faith, with so much hunger to live. And that's the goldfish poem. So I'm gonna read two more poems here if we're good with that. This next one's called Tiburon, so now we're going into sharks. We're getting into bigger things. Tiburon is the Spanish word for shark, so to tiburon. Once, my mother and a credit card bought their daughter a pool table, and I found myself in the backyard with a growing chest and clumsy hands. I claimed corner pocket until I could master to sink an 8-ball, and by 15, the neighborhood kids knew of the Mexican girl named Tiburon, the shark who'd bite at the sound of a pool stick chopped into strategy in exchange for Walmart gift cards. And I recall a time when a boy who thought himself a man challenged me to a game of strip pool. I thanked the sky for the cold desert night, for cloaking my body with layers. I emptied the pool table of its stripped billiards, and the boy who thought himself a man stripped down to a full moon, mooned the room, cupped his manhood, and I walked away with his shit talk in my pocket. Years later, in college, my roommate asked to accompany her to a local pub. The bar sticky and old beer and jukebox. We took our seat on broken stools, rickety when our legs crossed themselves for good balance. The room full of tall men hovered over the pool table, their hands choking the necks of IPAs. I ordered coronas with sliced limes, stacked a tower of quarters on the table, stared up at a white man covered in mermaid tattoos trapped in the ocean of his arm. I'll play for $5 and a few smokes, I say. Break the table, and his jaw snaps back at the reckless dance. 4 beers later, I sweep a $20 bill in American spirits. I walk into the alley, smoke my winnings, exchange my dollar bills for California burritos, and my mouth smothered in salsa verde. I laugh at the history of the men who dared doubt the feral animal that blazes in this blood. So that's Tiburon. I'm gonna close you out with one more. So thank you all for listening. Thinking of quarantine life, I've also been in conversation with Siri more than I have with my family. And so I just went ahead and had a conversation with Siri. This is called A Conversation with Siri About Death. I watch slasher movies, hate the sight of real blood leave the body. I panic on planes, think of ways the sky or machine will betray me. I read books and fear to evaporate out of this world before I could see its soft hands. I ask Siri how long a human can live without food. She says 40 days. I am 32. And I feed the backyard lizard houseflies, because I know what it means to be a small thing, empty with hunger, simmering in the boil of June. In my car, I keep matches and water for the apocalypse. I ask Siri if death hurts. She says depends. Today, I remind my fragile father to walk careful, and he slams his toe on a corner wall. His toenail bent back like a door hinge, an entrance open for no one to nowhere. I ask Siri how long a daughter can live without her father. She says there's a crisis in America. My father's broken brown flesh waves like a stiff flag, and I think about skin, about another dying, and perhaps heaven needs all the help it can get to send a winged saint to convince the hand, the gun, the trigger to write a different story. To write a different story I know shouldn't be asked to be rewritten, and I don't know where I'll be buried. Below the earth where I was raised, or below the earth that questions my right to own a bit of fortune. I guess I'm writing this poem to understand where our bones sink to after the last spill of breath. Perhaps like this poem, born when the first line crawls across the page, then a small funeral when the last word sits like a headstone. I promise you, turn the page and witness a resurrection. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all.
Wow. That last one, there was I'm thinking of the the previous ones, and they were serious in nature, but they almost had a little bit of, I don't want to say playful, but I think maybe it was the animals that seemed that way, or
Yeah.
just the animal that, But it was interesting. You have a Sorry, I'm trying to put my tea down. You have a thing, not a thing, but you incorporate animals. It
Mm-hmm.
seems into your poetry. I mean, the first book has an animal in the title, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, the first book? Oh, yeah.
Or so the one.
The chapbook you talking about?
Yes, yeah. Is that a what is animals? It seems like it has a meaning or a power to you.
Sure. So I think Adam's referring to my chapbook, which is called Grasshoppers Before Gods, which came out in 2016, I think it was, from a press called Dancing Girl Press in Chicago. Um, that the chapbook, as well as my current full-length collection, and then the poems I'm making right now, there's this fascination with like insects and bugs and animals. A lot of it is an ode to growing up as a little girl. I was always playing with the earth, before the iPhone and before laptops and all these like tech things to find entertainment. And, my parents would be like, go play in the backyard. And so there were a lot of, intimate moments in exploring how these little creatures navigate through the world, sometimes joyous, sometimes not so much. I also learned, using animals as kind of or insects as like a window or a mirror or a door to have the hard conversations. And I saw a lot of that also happening in children's literature, where we could talk about heavy topics if all the creatures are rabbits, right? And I wanted to use animals and insects as kind of these microcosms of little doorways into these larger conversations. And if we can zoom in to something that's kind of helpless or in ways miraculous creatures, perhaps that'll, give us the invitation to look at humanity in a different way. And, that's kind of my obsession with just like things that are abject and other. And I always gravitate to them to help hold those conversations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes sense. I'm glad you brought up the children's book aspect, because there's a big use of animals that I've seen, and almost sometimes even inanimate objects. I think Marceline's probably a good example in her books with Penguinot and the Bear's Garden and things like that. So it's a very useful tool, I guess. Animals and the earth, the whole earth-based stuff, I think is a really useful about writing and explaining something in a way. Okay, so I want to ask, because in the times that I've seen you both read and MC events, you have this way of commanding attention, and I think Chris Van Oy is another one who's got a way of doing it. You guys do two different ways, but you both command this attention, and I gotta admit, I really admire that a lot. Can you? I'm wondering if this is something that you really work on and you really have tried to hone over the years, or if this is just something that you, as growing up, you had this personality that just kind of always grabbed people like that.
I think that's a great question. I think it's a mixture of things. Growing up, I was, and I still am, a big old introvert. Like, I'm real awkward in front of people. But, give me a mic or a classroom and, I can transform that space to like speak for people who need to hear it that day. And growing up, I had 3 requests in a conservative Latina household, right? It's like, do your chores, get straight A's, don't get pregnant. And so like growing up in a real narrative point of view, it kind of limits your opportunity to explore voice and language in rebellious and liberating ways. And it wasn't until I got to leave home and explore, higher education, being handed these texts and these scholars on how language can be really powerful ways to communicate, connect, and create allyship. That's really what honed in my addiction to language. And at the same time, I was also having this kind of intervention and exploration of spoken word, which also played a big role in my life. I was part of the San Diego Elevated Slam team. We went to nationals, and I was like the first Chicana to represent in San Diego on a national level. We came in 4th out of 72 teams in the nation, and it was me using stories of my people and language and culture to help the team get there. And the I guess the power and the invitation to be in front of a mic is addicting when you get to be done and folks come up to you and say, I went through the same thing. Thank you. I'm too scared to share that story. And when you say to command a room, I hope it's more of an invitation to listen, because sometimes we've done a really good job of being folks who know how to hear, but we're forgetting the art of listening. And so there's a poet named Paul Tran, and they talk about when you walk into a room, a lot of people don't expect your body to be miraculous. And a lot of times you can use your voice to be present and do that good work.
Yeah, I think I want to clarify. I don't necessarily mean demand attention, but more in the way of like, so here's an example, and I'm going to use Chris Van again, because this blew my mind when I saw it. There was a reading at Whistle Stop here in South Park, and I remember when it was his turn to read, he was, if you've never been, it's kind of a big room, but it's separated by a wall. So the people reading were in one area,
Mm-hmm.
and in the back, it was Chris's turn to read, and in the back, Chris just started his poem from the back,
Yep.
and he walked up,
Mm-hmm.
and even the people that weren't there for the poetry reading, they stopped what they were doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they paid. And it's that kind of like, I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Like it just that kind of thing. Like that's, I don't know how he does it. Like I'm
Yeah,
so fascinated in it, and I'm just I admire it. So
and I do too. Shout out to Chris. And I remember being at Ducky Waddles, and Chris was the feature, and he did the same thing. He popped out of nowhere in the back, but he was reading this poem that was like unfolding like this long scroll, and we were
yeah,
just all mesmerized by like, how long is this poem? And whoa, he has that much of a, and I think it comes down to, not only finding ways to speak on the page to our readers, but also finding how to bring the page to life with our voices and body gesture and movement, and how we can um, use and manipulate the room as a resource to let the poems kind of, resurrect and live in that moment in time. And so I think Chris is a great example who does that really well.
do you write with when you're creating a poem,
Mm-hmm.
creating it with your vocal, how you're going to vocalize it, or are you getting it out on paper and then you work on that vocalization later?
I think they both happen simultaneously. Um, when I'm, for most poems, when I'm writing, it always starts with concept, and I write, and then I read out loud. I write, and then I read out loud. I scratch things out, rewrite things, bring them back. So I think language and sound are both, for me, at least as a writer, are kind of in this jump rope marriage of coming together to take shape. And, I have both present at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. I remember when I first had my first book published with Puna Press, and Ted was like, "I will do it, but you got to get out there and read. Like, and that's the only way we'll do it." And I was like, "Oh shit. Like I'm
Yeah.
not used to this, you know." So like I really had to, and I remember the first time I got up there and read, and I was like, "Okay, that did not sound like it did in my head when I read it to myself in my head." So I had to really like practice, and now I've noticed that when I write how I'm going to vocalize in mind.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and sometimes I don't, but a lot of the times if I'm writing a long poem, it's in my head I'm thinking how it's going to sound when I recite it. So I'm always curious, and some people that's not so much a focus, and that's equally acceptable in my book. Like you don't have to
Absolutely.
do it that way. It's just it's interesting to see who's doing what.
Yeah, and I share that
um,
with my students as well. I go, your best supporters of revision is going to be time. Let that thing sit and cook for a while, then you come back to it, and reading out loud. Because when you get to read things out loud, you get to hear the fluidity of the message you're trying to communicate. And, sometimes that can help and sometimes it can't. That's okay too.
yeah, I've definitely encountered both when it can and when it can't. So I think that's a learning process. That's part of it,
Mhm.
and I think that's equally as important. So
Absolutely.
um, you mentioned your students. I have a ton of respect for teachers, and I taught a few podcast classes, but that's it. Like I wasn't like teaching a whole classroom, and it was pretty difficult. But there was
Hmm.
one thing that I discovered, or noticed at least, is that I can give them the structure and the
Hmm.
knowledge, but they're gonna have to do it to discover themselves and what they are really good at. So I'm curious, when you teach writing, are there things that can only be learned through the practice of writing?
Hmm. I mean, I always tell my students there's two things you need to, and this is why there's a lot of brilliant poets who've never stepped into the education system. And there's a lot of not so exciting poets, and that's okay too, who've gotten a master's and a PhD, right? And so two things need to happen. Is there needs to be a balance between craft, the tools you carry in your toolbox to manifest your language into the stories they want to become, and then two, passion and excitement and the humanization of what your stories want to become. And there needs to be a middle ground between those two. Thinking about when it comes to writing, because you're more focused on the question of writing, correct?
Yeah, the writing and the people who are doing the writing, and how they're I guess what I'm thinking is are there things that are inherent in us? Is being a storyteller, for example, something that's inherent, or can that be learned?
Or could that be? Could you repeat that last part?
I'm sorry. Could it be learned? Is storytelling something that people are naturally? I'm using storytelling as an example, but is that something that you are just naturally that's in you, or is that something that you can pick up over time?
I mean, I think that goes back to the science of, is it nature or is it nurture? And it's something folks are still trying to battle through and argue. However, I think the human body has the ability to be natural storytellers. I mean, it goes back to the days of our ancestors as oral storytellers around the campfire, archiving history, the news, the joys, the celebrations of, the of our indigenous people. But I think the body possesses the ability to be natural storytellers. What, again, I have conversations a lot with my students, is a lot of times they're, if I reference the writer Don Miguel Ruiz in his book called The Four Agreements, is that we all possess this kind of free child within us to be wild and free and liberal. We become domesticated into adulthood and we forget how to tap into storytelling and imagination because we've been domesticated into the call of capitalism to be successful and make money and support the family and put dinner on the table. And sometimes the power of being in a community of writers is really what can harness you back into that state of freedom with language. And I always say, collaboration and community is always the key to coming back to being a storyteller, because one must have community to tell a story. People are going to respond and cry and laugh and snap or not listen, and then you got to fine tune that storytelling ability. So I think every person possesses their own gifts in storytelling, but I think it's all hidden within the body. Y'all just got to find the right space, community, book, people to help let that shine a little more.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, the community part. I think that's really important. It's good to have a teacher, so to speak, but at the same time, sometimes that group of people can be your teacher. And I think that's important. I'm always fascinated with the people that just like musicians who can just pick up an instrument and just know it. Like it blows my mind. There's this guy, this is going to sound weird, maybe a little off topic, but there's this guy on YouTube. His name is Shaman, and that's his YouTube name. He's this New York, but he speaks like different dialects of Chinese. So he'll go in New York, he'll go to Chinatown and go into a restaurant and just surprise the shit out of these people with this perfect dialect, and he learned one of the languages in like 3 weeks, and I'm just like, how is your brain doing that? Like, that's so, there's got to be something in there, that is just, he was born with that. Like, I don't know, that's my only theory,
Yeah, and I mean, I look at my mentor, like Ilya Kaminsky. My goodness, it took him 10 years to come out with his next book, or other poets who can, bust out a book in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was like, I know it's a range between 10 and 15. Thank you for that, Kazim. I appreciate you. But, some, I think in the idea of thinking of process and production, you think of intent, and you also think of what needs to be present during X, Y, and Z time frame that's being called to be kind of birthed into the world. And yeah, I think some folks just produce, and have a lot of beautiful book babies into the world. And some people, their pacing and speeds a little, a little more tamed, a little slower, and that's okay too.
Yeah, it all works. We're all getting to that. We're all working towards that one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on this sort of training for this 5K I ran earlier or last year. I remember one time I ran past a guy who might his age might have been in triple digits, but he was just going along, and he was going really slowly, and I was just like, so much respect for that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just he's going at his pace. He's not worried about being pat or anything else. He is at his pace, and I appreciate that. I just definitely appreciate that. So, um, Karla, this has been fun. I want to before we go, we have two things to talk about really quick. I want about the book recommendation and also everything you're doing and where people can find you.
Absolutely. My book recommendation for this evening is a wonderful colleague of mine. We just met at an open mic and then started writing poems together and started submitting together. And he just came out with his first book in the fall of 2020. It's called On This Side of the Desert. It won the 2019 Stan and Tom Wick Poetry Prize, which was judged by another beautiful, brilliant writer, Natalie Diaz. So if you want to check this out, please support him. His name is Alfredo Aguilar. And this is a wonderful book that talks about from innocence to experience in terms of boyhood into manhood, under the spectrum of machismo and what it means to be Mexican American, and border politics, and a lot of beautiful, magical, surrealist moments of mothers turning into wolves. And it's highly recommended. So this is Alfredo Aguilar. Please check that out. And then what am I up to? So obviously quarantine, obviously teaching with
Yeah.
Zoom. I will be teaching in the spring at San Diego State University, a Chicanx creative writing course for the Chicana Studies Department. So if y'all want to come check that out, you're more than welcome to. I will also be teaching a poetry seminar, advanced poetry seminar at San Diego City College, and then an introduction to creative writing at Miracosta College in Oceanside. So in other words, I'm that nice free flyer, faculty member, but I love doing it and I love being with my students. So if y'all need a class, please feel free to contact me. You can find me on my website, which is carlacordero.com. I'm most present and most active on my Instagram account. So you could find me there, which is Karla with a K, Flaca with a K 13. I'm also doing a fun giveaway right now. If you click on the link on my Instagram bio, you can also access complete free PDF copy of my first chapbook, Grasshoppers Before God. So if y'all want to, snag that nice chapbook PDF, you're more than welcome to check that out.
Oh, once I finish this stream, I am absolutely going to do that. So, I'm looking forward to it. Karla, again, thank you very much. I'm really glad we got to do this. Again, please tell Mario I say hello and give him my love, and good luck on the graphic novel and all that. And you know what? I may have him on the show someday soon too. So
you'd have a lot of fun doing it, Adam.
We'll get that
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. All right, Karla, thank you.
Likewise, Kazim. It was fun. Thank you. I would love that. Let's.
I would like to join. Throw me in there. I'll be there too. So awesome. I would be so. If we need to go on tour too, I'm okay with that. I'll make the time. I'll make the time. All right. Well, Karla, I'm sure we'll find a space. So yeah, awesome. Well, everyone, it's been a great night. Just a couple things before we head out for the evening. Um, thanks to thanks to Ted Washington and Puna Press for hosting this and allowing this platform. It's pretty cool. It's fun. It's fun. It's different from used to doing it either in person or on Instagram. So this is fun. This is a good time. Um, a reading will be February 3rd, Wednesday. I don't know who the guests are yet. I'll figure it out. Don't worry about that. But keep an eye out. Follow us on Instagram at viral_poetry_series. Find us on Facebook too. I don't post a lot, so I'm not going to spam your feed or anything. You'll just be once or twice a month. You'll get a little image of what's happening next. So follow us there. Check out other readings on the Puna Press live page, especially Lizzie Wan's reading. It's pretty great. I mean, she has some amazing guests on there, and Lizzie's amazing herself. So definitely check that out. There are other readings around town online that you can probably check out. Palabra, that's run by Ted Washington. I think that one's on Zoom. But just follow the Palabra page on all the social media, really, and you'll find out when those are. Those are 2 times a month. The second and fourth Thursday, I believe that is. Awesome findings. It's also the one Gil Soto. He's got one that is through, I believe, the Art Institute, but I am not sure. But I know he has one. I think that's on like Tuesdays. To go check that out because Gil's amazing. He was on the Viral Poetry Series last month, and that was a treat, man. That was such a good treat. So check out everything, share it with your friends, tell people about it. It's all online so everybody can go. And that's the great thing. We now have the ability to really spread all this art that we're creating out into the world. You know, people have no excuse to miss it. So yeah. Oh, by the way, Old Globe, that's who it is. So Tuesday, Old Globe. So that's yeah. But again, tell everybody, spread it out. This is a golden opportunity almost. I hate to say it's on the back of a pandemic, but this is an opportunity for us to really come together and enjoy everything that everybody's doing creatively. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So we'll see you next month. We're going to head out of here with music from Sheila Chandra. By the way, Kazim, do we know why she lost her voice? Is that public knowledge? Oh, interesting. Well, unfortunately, but we're going to get to hear her. Fortunately, now. So I'm gonna. Is it, okay, well, I'm really looking forward to it. And all the other songs. This one I'm gonna play is called "Ever So Lonely," but there's other ones that I'm really looking forward to. So, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a really fun night. I'm gonna go hang out with my awesome cat now, and we'll check it out. So we will see you all next month. Thank you all.
Never so lonely without you. Never so lonely. Sink into your eyes, and all I see. Love is an ocean, and you for me. Sink into your eyes, your eyes. are all I see. Your love is an ocean. An ocean refuses no river, never slow. An ocean refuses no river, waiting for the time when we can be alone together. Alone together eternally. The ocean refuses no river. The ocean, your ocean refuses no river. Ever so ever so lonely without you. Your ocean refuses no rest.